Okay, last one, banking. These are the biggest banks in Thailand as of March 2024 by total assets. The biggest is Bangkok Bank, second is Kasikorn Bank, third is Thai Bank, fourth is Siam Commercial Bank. Okay, so we stop. Top four is good enough. The rest not important. So very easy. Banks with just a few key metrics, and we want to make a comparison. Okay, so I just compare the top four. In terms of profits, Kasikorn Bank, no, not Kasikorn Bank, Siam Commercial Bank is the largest, right? But they are pretty much comparable. You can see the size doesn't really differ much. Even in terms of assets, it's not very big difference. Pretty close for the top four, even though there are some differences. In terms of earnings growth, Thai Bank is the fastest over the past 5 years, okay? In terms of net interest margin, Kasikorn Bank is the highest, right? Net interest margin is the difference between the amount you borrow and the amount you lend out, right? So of course you want it as high as possible, okay? In terms of ROE, Siam Commercial Bank is the highest, right? The rest are pretty much comparable, 8 to 9%. Non-performing loan ratio, this is what you want it as low as possible. So Bangkok Bank is the lowest. Again, the rest are pretty much comparable. Capital adequacy ratio, you want a good balance. You want definitely to pass the minimum requirement, but you also don't want it to be too high. That means that you're too conservative. You don't want it to be too low, then you are too aggressive, right, in lending out your money. Because what this means is that the bank will lend out, if the bank have $1, right, you will lend out like $5. Okay, so if you lend too much, you are over leveraged, which means that if there's a bank run, you will die very fast. Okay, so that's what I mean. But if you keep too much money in the bank, which means you don't make enough money, right? While your competitors make more money. So that's why I say it is a balancing act. Of course, if the numbers are more or less the same, the safer bank is the one that has higher capital adequacy ratio, right? But again, they are very close. Okay, they're very close. Okay, so all in all, you realize that each bank has its own forte, right? Each bank has its own forte. There isn't a clear winner in this case that the quality of this bank is so much more than the others. All right. So in that sense, if you ask me, buying any of the bank based on these metrics, right? Based on this assessment, we didn't put in a qualitative assessment, just numbers alone. I would say that there is no difference. So it will just boil down to valuation. Okay, so which bank is cheap enough? So Kasikorn Bank is a dividend grower, right? You can see the dividends has grown over the years, except for COVID period, right? Which is understandable. Now the dividends has jumped back to record high again, right? Likely also because interest rate is higher right now. It's good for banks, and Kasikorn Bank has the highest net interest margin. Okay, so for banks, I again will use the higher margin of safety, right? Looking at -1 or +1 standard deviation. So as I said, the quality of the bank looks similar among the top four. Then it just boils down to valuation. In terms of, I use price to book here. I drop the free cash flow because for banks, you use free cash flow is useless. And if you look at the price to book ratio, it's slightly higher than the -1 standard deviation. PS ratio is similar. PE ratio is lower. Dividend yield is higher. So it looks like generally this tells you it's undervalued. This is fairly valued, and this is overvalued, right? But generally, I would say that it looks more undervalued than fairly valued in this case. Right? Especially the PE ratio and the dividend yield give you that sensing. 5.2% yield is quite generous already, especially for a bank. Okay, so Kasikorn Bank is also another one that's undervalued in my view. Okay, great. We have come to the end of the sharing, and these are the investor relations websites for the respective companies. You can go and take a look. You can just do a Google search. You don't need to, but you want to take a print screen or a picture of this is fine, right? You can go and take a look at they each have their own investment presentation. A lot of the images, for example, this Kasikorn Bank dividend per share history, right? This is taken right off the slides that they provided. Okay, it's not I do one, right? So you can see is has very rich information, and you take a look yourself, right? Then you will know. So in summary, I hope that you can understand how SDR can help you invest in overseas counters without leaving the SGX ecosystem, right? So that's the important point, and understand how SGX mechanism work. And now currently there are 8 SDR, 3 that was launched last year and 5 that's launched yesterday, and potentially there's more in the future, but you have enough to look at for a start right now. And I also share with you the financial information of this SDR readily available. You can always look for the information via Google search or what, and they are in English as well. Okay, so some other announcement. You can join the SGX Telegram group as well as the email newsletter. The QR codes are here. Then you just follow the steps to sign up for them. They are free and you can receive updates via these channels. And now let's proceed to our pigeonhole and our Q&A session. If you have questions, please feel free to key in and just let me share the, yeah. Okay, so good. You have already keyed in some questions. Let me just click through. What is the minimum capital adequacy ratio requirement in Thailand for banks? I don't have a number, but definitely I think the banks all clear one, because if you don't clear this, you're in big trouble. Okay, and the share price will tank one. Yeah. Same thing for Singapore ones. They will usually have a buffer, maybe about 20% more than the minimum. Okay, this is usually not an issue. Okay, they will clear it pretty well. Does Thai government regulate the electricity prices? I don't know enough when it comes to this regulating the electricity prices, but looking at the numbers and the margin that Gulf Energy is delivering over the past 10 years, right? I would say that even if they regulate, right, the prices provide good enough margin for them. Okay, and provide good enough earnings for them to keep them going. So I would say that again, based on the financial track record, it's good enough to make an assessment. Okay, whether they regulate or not doesn't matter. Okay, of course, especially if they regulate and they still can make enough money, right, means that's very good. Okay, it's just like during inflation period, do they regulate too much? That one is a question mark. Okay, that one is a question mark. Does Thailand limit the number of telco licenses? If not, AIS will subject to price war from new players. Okay. I also think that this is not a relevant question. The reason is because the industry is going to be fewer players rather than more players. And I think it's also a sign where Thailand government realized that you cannot have too many telcos. Okay, because the telcos are suffering now. The telcos are not like the past where they enjoy fat margins, high dividends. The reason is because nowadays the price plan that we pay for is much lower. It's deflationary, right? If you realize your telco expenses is deflationary, your handphones are getting cheaper, your plans are getting cheaper. Right? Last time you pay more. And they still need to invest in 5G, 6G, 7G, whatever G. Okay, they are going to cost more to operate, right? And they take in less revenue. So given that, right, you don't need competitive forces anymore, which means you don't need to introduce more telcos to bring down the price, right? To bring down markets. You don't need to, because the telcos now are not as profitable as they are before, right? And the fact that True Corporation and DTech, right, they were allowed to be merged, right, tells you a lot, right? The government did not impose antitrust laws on them. The government did not reject their proposal of merging. And because after they merged, the telco number become just 2 and the True Corporation become the biggest player after the merger. This is a very monopolistic move, and yet the government said, okay, go ahead. So it tells you that the government doesn't want more competitors anymore, right? As I said, because the telcos are not as profitable as before. They need this telco to be profitable to continue to invest in infrastructure, right? And that's what the government wants. And you look at True Corporation, past 3 years lose money. You go and still introduce more telco, you're going to die, right? They're going to suffer. So I think we already passed the point already. It's not about having more telco, right? Even in Singapore, I think 4 telco is too many already. Okay, the price, and they have MNVO, right? The mobile network virtual operators. So that would cause the price to lower a lot more, right? So that's my view. Okay, I think is not an important question, right? The direction is that the government wants fewer players and they are okay with fewer players. Okay. Do we have to pay tax on dividends? If yes, how much is it? 10%, right? There's a dividend tax of 10% in Thailand. There's also likely a handling fee of about 1% for the SDRs issuer, right? I would say generally it's still okay considering that US you're paying a dividend tax of 30% is very high, right? I think 10% is still reasonable. Not more than that, right? Even 20% I think is high. So even for that, you just less off that 10%. Let's say for 5% stock, you will still get about 4.5, right? So I think it's still reasonable. Okay, of course, we wish not the dividend tax lah. Okay, but that is what the government imposed withholding tax, which you cannot don't pay because they will deduct directly before they distribute the rest of the dividends to you. All right. If you trade SDR during Thai working hours, does it mean the bid-ask spread now as well? Yes. Not Thai working hours, the exchange trading hours. Okay, the Thai exchange trading hours is shorter than Singapore. Singapore is longer. So at the start and the end, I think it's about half an hour. At the start and half an hour at the end, you will have the Thai stock market close. Right? So that's where the SDR bid-ask spread may be wider. Okay. Is the main lot to buy 100 for SDR? Yes, it's the same for it's the same for all the stocks listed in SGX. Okay. Yeah. Okay, great. We have answered all the questions. Thank you for your questions. I hope my sharing has helped you understand this SDR mechanism, and hopefully you can see some investment opportunities as well. Especially you are trying to invest beyond Singapore, and this SDR would be a very good avenue for you to start with because you are investing through a very familiar platform. Thank you very much. Hope to see you next time. All the best to investment. Good luck and goodbye.